In this tutorial video, we're going to look at how to model our picture frame that we do in Year 8. This picture frame is using our crosslap joint in each of the four corners, and we can see in this finished sample the measurements that are important. It's not super clear in this picture, but it is slightly rectangular in shape. We have one side that is 400 millimeters and one side that is a total of 350, so slightly rectangular. Our wood is generally 30 millimeters wide and 12 millimeters thick, the same as we've been using in the past. And our crosslap joints are going to be always 30 millimeters from the end. So we can see this in these pictures down the bottom, these measurements, sorry. It's 30 millimeters from the end, and the joint itself is 30 millimeters as well. So while this may look like a much more complex diagram to create, it's still only a couple of pieces that we need to do. So as always, we're going to start with a new model. So again, we're going to do this in much the same way as we would with a real piece of wood. I'll also demonstrate some ways that we can do this a little bit more quickly. So I'm going to start by modeling my longer piece, my 400. So much like we've done before, I'm just going to draw an approximate rectangle shape and then fill in my measurements down in the bottom right hand corner. So it's going to be 400 by 30 millimeters wide. And I'll zoom in with my extents tool, and then with my mouse just scroll out a little bit and rotate for a better view. Now I'm going to bring that up to the 12 millimeter thickness, and I now have something representing my piece of wood. So the way I would be doing this now in class with a real piece of wood is I'm going to start by measuring 30 millimeters from each end of this, and that will give me the outside measurement for my joint. So in SketchUp, I'll be using my tape measure again to get my construction line. Start from the edge, go across, and I'm going to type my 30 in, and I'll do the same on the other side. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is from this line I've just created, I'm going to measure another 30 millimeters. Now this 30 millimeters comes because the width of our joint, so the piece that needs to go in there, is 30 millimeters wide. So we need a gap that's 30 millimeters. So I'll do the same on this end. And now what I would be doing in the classroom is using my square and my pencil to draw these two lines across. Again, in SketchUp, I'm just going to draw it in now using the locking points on each of those. And again, I might just zoom in a bit here. From there across to there. Just like that. Okay. I can rub out my construction lines at this point. Don't need those anymore. And now what I'll be doing is measuring my halfway down. So I'm just going to do it on this end down here. I'm going to rotate a little bit more. And I'll be measuring halfway down. So again, I would measure 2 points of 6 millimeters and then join them up. And I will then be drawing my lines down. Of course, I'll do that on both sides. So I have these lines coming straight down. And I'll be joining that up as well. And I'll do the same on the other side. I'll then be cutting my relief cuts in this waist area down to this line I've just drawn, and then I'll be chiseling this out. Of course, in SketchUp, we can do it much more efficiently, so we don't need to draw those lines. So I'm just going to quickly remove those lines that I drew and the construction line, and I can simply pull that or push that down at this point because it's a separate shape. So down by 6 millimeters and down by 6 millimeters. So we should end up with a piece that looks like that. Okay, as we usually do, let's make that into a group now so that we can easily manipulate it later. Okay, so that's our longer piece. Now our shorter piece was very, very similar, and we would go about it in much the same way. We're going to draw roughly at the shape we need, and this one was 350 millimeters long by 30 millimeters wide, so just a little bit shorter. And again, we will pull that up to our 12mm thickness. Now I'm going to show you a slightly quicker way to do this. We start off very similar. We're going to take our tape measure. We're still going to do our 30mm from each end. We do need to get that measurement for us. But instead of drawing another 30mm each time, I'm going to use the rectangle tool again, and I'm simply going to go from one of the intersections. I'll just zoom in to make it really clear. So one of the intersections of that line across the other side, and again, I'm creating a 30 by 30 square here. It's 30mm wide because that's the gap that we're creating, and it's 30mm across, of course, because that's the width of the wood anyway. So I'm just going to do 30 by 30, and we can see that there, and I'll be able to push that down my 6. So it's just another way of doing it. Again, it's always good to look at different ways to achieve the same result, and I can of course rub out that construction line up here. Now I haven't done the other end, so quickly jump in here, and I'll do it the same way again with my rectangle tool from that intersection across the other side, and then type the actual measurements in, and then I'm going to push that down as well by the 6 and remove my construction line. And again, I'm going to make a group. Doesn't matter that I'm covering some of the original one because I'm not covering the whole group. So as you can see, that was selected, but this wasn't because the whole part of it wasn't chosen. So I'm going to make that into a group. At this point, we have the pieces that we need. Of course, the frame has 2 of each of those. So I'm simply going to duplicate them. So I'm going to copy that and then paste that in. I'll just stick one of them over there for a second. So these are going to be my 2 pieces in that direction. But before I copy this one, hopefully we realize we actually have to flip it over and rotate it by 90 degrees. So let's do that again. So we're going to use our rotation tool, in this menu here. All right, and we need to do the 2 options. It doesn't matter which way you go. I'm going to rotate it around first and then. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure I've selected the right piece, the piece I'm going to rotate. I'm going to grab my rotation tool from over here, and it doesn't matter which order you do it, but I'm going to do the rotation first. Sorry, that was the moving tool, rotation tool. So I'm going to do the rotation this way first, and then I'll flip it over. So I need to have a 90-degree rotation. There we go. And just zooming in to make it a bit easier to see, I'm going to now rotate it around this axis. All right. So again, this time it's 180 degrees to give it a complete flip. And there we go. If I zoom out, we can see I've got it flipped around the way I want. So I'm going to quickly just move it into a more appropriate location for a second, just roughly there. And now I'm going to duplicate that one. Just copy and paste it in, and I'll paste one approximately here. So I've got them in roughly the location, 2 pieces and 2 pieces. And now I just need to use my move tool, and again, taking advantage of the fact that everything wants to lock into place. Helps if I have the right one chosen. There we go, taking advantage of the move tool and the fact that everything does want to lock into place, I can quickly move these into the right locations. So moving and rotating, making sure you choose your pieces each time before you try and move it. You don't want to accidentally move the wrong piece, but just locking everything into place. You can't quite see, again, moving closer so you can actually see where you're locking. There we go. And the last one, we'll just rotate around a piece and take that one. And finally rotate, sorry, not rotate, move that one, lock it into there. There we go. So we now have our frame with our crosslap joints joined in properly. Now, hopefully those of you paying attention will realize we're missing one more piece that we haven't spoken about, and that is actually the backing piece. So what we're going to do here is actually just flip this right over. So we're going to basically spin it around so I can see it on the what is our back. And we're going to have to create a piece that goes in here. Now, when you're given the real piece, it's going to be a bit bigger than what you need, so we're going to need to trim it down. What we're going to do here is model what would be ideal, and essentially what we want is a piece that's going to come in halfway from these edges. So all the way around, we want to come in halfway, and that's where our backing piece will sit. So the only real way to do that at this point is to take our tape measure and come in halfway, basically give ourselves some guidance, remembering that these are 30 millimeters wide, so we'll make it 15 to get the half, and we just need to basically bring these in on all four sides. Now I could have worked out the measurement, drawn up a piece and then positioned it in the right place, but again, because everything else is measured correctly, I can put these guides in and then very easily take my rectangle tool and take it from one corner point to the other and create the piece that's the actual size I need. And now I'm going to grab the push-pull, drag it out, and this is only a 3 millimeter thickness. This is the piece of plywood on the back. You'll have used that before. So it's a 3 millimeter, press enter, and if I rotate around, I can just see how that's got a very slight thickness there. Now I do want to turn that into a group, right? And I could do it in a few ways. But again, what I'm going to actually do, so I'll just get rid of the construction lines first. What I am going to do is quickly hide the rest of this. So we may have seen that in a previous video, but if I choose any of these groups, I can right click and hide them. And I can just have to do them one by one very quickly. So I've just hidden them. And that means I can work with just this piece safely. So I'm just going to select the whole area and turn that into a group. But I haven't had to worry about whether the other parts are chosen because they were hidden. So again, we're going to come over to our little glasses over on the right hand side, choose that, and in our hide or unhide area, I'm just going to say unhide all to bring everything back. So now I've got everything in their own individual groups again. So it's very easy to change and do things too. The benefit here now is we've actually drawn in this piece without actually knowing the size because we did everything else correct. We had all the other pieces measured correctly. We measured in from the edges. But what we can do now is take our tape measure to find out what this should actually be. So if I do that, I can see that the measurement is 260.41 approximately. Or another way I could do that, and a tool that we maybe haven't talked about but you've seen, is when I use my dimensions tool. And that's what you've seen me use at the start of these videos when I'm showing you what the sizes are. So if I simply click on any 2 points like that and then pull it around, I can see my measurement. So we've got the same measurement, 260.41. And again, down this way, that measurement comes out at 309.92. So there's obviously a little mistake here because we shouldn't be getting a point value. So I must have accidentally made something ever so slightly the wrong size. But here we go. We can see that we've made a mistake. And of course, I could go back and fix this up. But for the purposes of this video, I'll leave it as it is. You can hopefully do that a little bit better than I've done and get your measurements exactly right. But if we got this exactly right, we would be able to take these measurements and we would know what to cut in the real world to make sure we got this exact piece. So I probably typed in a value just slightly short, maybe a decimal point wrong. But again, I think for the purposes of this video, it's sufficient and you'll be able to see what you need to do. Okay, hopefully that's making sense for you. You can go off and model that for yourself. Don't forget to color it and maybe even show a design in the middle if you'd like to, and then have that ready to hand in on time. Thanks for watching.